an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Season 1, Episode 5, Reign of Sorrows. We've got Reign of Sorrows, we've got Alchemist Anguish. None of these episode titles really bode well. I don't know why I keep being surprised at how poorly everything is going. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Max, if you're out there, I take back the mean things that I said about you for the last episode. And I only kind of hate you this time around. So this episode is quite a lot, actually, when you stop and think about the implications of everything. But we're going to start by talking about the opening scene, which is where we've got Ed running up to his mom at age 5, showing her a little mechanical cow, I think, that he transmuted, and her being proud of him and saying thanks, that was such an amazing thing you did. And then all of a sudden the tomatoes fall on the floor. And he looks up. She's got tomatoes in her lap, for those who feel like that was a non sequitur. And it's her saying, "If you can do that, why couldn't you make Mommy better, Ed?" Guys, I hated this so much. I knew as soon as the tomatoes hit the floor, I was like, oh no. But there is something about when we first see this creature, it keeps being called the Trish Chimera in the dubs, BT dubs. Hey, when we saw it was on the ground reaching. There's something about it being on the ground. It doesn't feel like a threat, you know? It's just sad. It's just awful. This thing looked like it was suffering. But it's standing and towering over him the way that it is in this dream. Kiddos, thank you, but I'll pass. I do not like that one bit. And then he turns around, and it's the little girl saying, "Let's play," and turning into the chimera. And he just wakes up with a start, and I'm like, yeah, dude, look. I'm not trying to say that you and that guy are the same the way that he was trying to say it. I'm just saying you're not as different as I'm sure you wish you were. And frankly, that is something that could probably be said about a lot of us and people that we don't like. Often that's why we don't like them, right? Is that there's something in them that reminds us of either things we don't like about ourselves or things that we are afraid of becoming. And so there is almost a pre-shame that we have because of their behavior, because it feels like, oh, am I going to be like this one day? And they don't seem to have the shame. And so you're resentful that you're already experiencing shame on their behalf that they don't. So he wakes up and his brother is asking him if he's all right. I don't know. I'm assuming that this is a, translation thing. But something that I noticed a lot in this episode is the fact that Al never really calls him Ed. He may here and there, but he almost always calls him brother. And as an American, it feels really weird. And I'm wondering if anybody who's more familiar with Japanese language, is this a more common thing and it's being directly translated because that's what it says, but because I'm wondering, do people call each other sister and brother in this way culturally, and it just doesn't really translate super well? Or is this sort of like a weird stilted dialogue because it's just a slightly stilted dialogue? Damien is saying yes. Okay. 'Cause yeah, it's just, this reminds me a little bit sometimes of like that establishing dialogue that you get in the first episode of like a new show. And they are trying really hard to establish who everybody is. So you'll have this weird, slightly contrived, like, okay, little bro, well, as your big sister, I have to say, and then their sibling comes in, well, as the middle child, I have to say, and they're like, it's very clear they're trying to let us know what the hierarchy is here. And so it has that feel to it, but because it keeps being done over and over again, I was just like, all right, that's not what it is. Candace says, honorifics are really more aggressive than they are here. They indicate role, but also the value of it. Damien says, it's one of the trickiest things for languages like English to deal with. Yeah, that makes sense. Because there's a lot more of a like deeply defined hierarchy. Not to say that we don't have hierarchies in America, but the difference between the way that we deal with them and the way that the Japanese deal with them is we try and pretend we don't have them, even though we most definitely do. And so they're not as much of a thing here because we are in denial. Whereas it seems like Japan is just like, no, we're just trying to make things clearer and simpler so we all know how it works and be a little bit more honest about it. All right, so Al is sitting next to him reading. Does Al not sleep? Because he has no soul, or he has a soul. He has no body, so he doesn't have to eat, as we have seen. I am assuming that he's just awake all the time, which has its like pluses and minuses. It's one of those things that I could see being like sort of excited that you get to always be doing things, but that you then also grow to miss the act of sleeping. At the same time, though, if you are in the situation that Al is, do you even get tired? Like, I'm assuming no, right? But it's just such an odd situation. Also, in regard to Al and Ed, there is something that I wanted to bring up. So, continually in this series so far, people think Al is the Fullmetal Alchemist. And they think Ed is like, I don't know, a disciple or like a, what do they call it? Apprentice? But like, if you were approaching a situation where you knew there was an alchemist who was named Fullmetal because he uses metal so much and even has metal armor, like his name is Fullmetal. We'll just take it as that. And you came across a dude who's clearly a dude with a metal arm and leg, even if you can't see them. Let's just say you just see a dude. And that dude is accompanied by a giant suit of armor that looks like there's a person in it. If you were an observer, would you think that the guy in the armor is the alchemist? Because the more I think about it, the more I believe when I was first watching the episode, I thought Ed was the alchemist right away. It didn't even occur to me to think that Al in the suit of armor was the alchemist. I was just confused why there were two, but I never thought that Al was the one, because I assumed right at the start that Al was some sort of mechanical being, like a golem, of metal that Ed had made with his abilities to like function as backup and a sidekick. So I'm just curious about like, if that perception that I have seems like, it feels to me like most people would assume that the person who looks like a person, that's what they would assume, rather than the guy in the suit. But I don't know, maybe it's supposed to be that, like, people just straight up don't even notice Ed, because Al is so huge that he completely dwarfs Ed out of the picture. I don't know. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, everybody constantly assuming that it's Al really doesn't actually line up with the way that I think about this at all. So they go to the office real early, even though they are not expected for a while. And they're talking to, I think this is Hawkeye, right? And they want to know what is going to happen to Nita. And she's like, oof, okay, so you're going to find out anyway. I guess I may as well tell you. She's dead, and so is Tucker. They were both murdered. And she's like, we don't know who it was. I'm heading over to the scene now. And Al says, we're coming with you. And she turns and says, you don't need to see this. With some real seriousness. I truly thought, like, they're going to win her over here. And they're going to get her to let them come. And it doesn't seem like they did that. And there's something about the fact that she absolutely manages to, like, hold her ground against these two, I'm sure, pretty insistent kids. I respect that a lot, and I really enjoy this moment of her just being like, look, I know that you're like State Alchemist and everything, but you're also fucking children, and I don't think so. It's a real bloody murder scene. It's not a place for you. Kyle says, I also think part of it is that people don't know Fullmetal is a teen boy, and that Al looks like a grown adult. I guess that's true. Al just looks like so much taller than a regular adult that it doesn't look like he would be a real person to me. But I don't know, maybe like people when they're in armor, that's what they would look like. So anyway, yeah, this cuts to the priest that I had it on good authority got eaten last episode, or the episode before, I should say. Standing out and preaching to everybody, we must hold tight to our faith. The time has come to rise up, weapon in hand, and fight under the protection of Leto. Down with heresy. And he's saying this, and this one guy comes forward and is like, can't you see how full of shit this dude is? And this other guy is like, yeah, well, we're not fucking sheeple like you are. So follow the money if you went on the forums and actually did your own research. I mean, there's this video on YouTube that will tell you the truth. So why don't you just stop listening to what the state tells you and go educate yourself? I'm sorry, everybody. I'm just, like, really sad now. Truly, like, it's so cliche, but everything that Lust says in the next scene, which is basically human beings are so fucking simple and they never learn, and you could just do this to them endlessly and they will always fall for it every time, is so fucking accurate. And we keep behaving as a culture and civilization like we're really advancing. And like in some ways we are. I'm not trying to pretend that we're just the same people that we were 700 years ago. But human nature stays the same. What we're fighting about is different, but like, getting us to this point is just as easy, I think, as it used to be. I don't know. It's hard to watch. And it's one of these things where I was just watching One Piece, and I actually meant to mention this in the recording, but I'm in an arc right now where there's a character named Crocodile who has sort of like set up this king to look like he's committed some crimes. And I couldn't help but think about how, like, nowadays you don't need to frame people. You just need to suggest a frame up somewhere on the internet in a well-placed location using the right keywords and the right username and the right timing. And you don't need absolutely anything to back it up. Nothing. You just have to say it, and it will like take root and begin to spread and grow like a mold. And it's really scary how easy it is to do now, and how any kind of actual evidence that people demand to see can be made, because the technology allows such manipulation of images and data that even proof you can't exactly like trust unless it's on video. And even then, it's just, I don't like it. So this whole thing, I'm like, what is this guy? He died. What is he even doing here? We see all these people beginning to go at each other's throats, and a child crumpling and crying, and Gluttony and Lust are chatting about how stupid all these assholes are. And then here comes the father walking in, and he's got this like energy to him that he didn't have. He's smiley in a way that I was like, what's up with this? And I thought maybe they possessed him, that it looked like Gluttony was going to get to eat him at the end of that episode, and maybe they didn't let Gluttony do it because they needed the body, because they were gonna, and no, instead it turns out that this is envy. And I don't know if it's just envy's power or if all of them can do this, but envy can take on the appearance of different people. I'm assuming it's just envy, because the point of envy is like wanting what other people have, right? And envy says, I'll go with a younger, cuter model. And says it in such a way that I am assuming envy doesn't always look like this, or maybe she was just making a joke, in terms of versus the father. But I don't know if envy has like a set form. What I keep thinking of with this is Sandman, and desire looks very different depending on who is looking at them. And just pops up all over the series with a very like different look, usually pretty androgynous, but I was wondering if maybe that was the deal with envy as well. So she transforms, and this dude who is like one of the followers happens to be right behind her when she turns into her actual self. And I love there's no panic that comes from her or from Lust. Neither of them even really shifts their body language. They just both look like, it's like, what I compare this to is you're in the middle of making coffee in the morning and you get a text saying somebody called out. That kind of energy of just, fuck. Ugh, okay, well, I have to deal with this now. And Gluttony comes up to him and says, can I eat him? Can I? And there's a pause. And then just Gluttony go into town in the background while Envy and Lust talk. Truly, this dude is enjoying himself. At one point, he's licking his fingers off and he's like, That was yummy. I was like, dude, you're making me really uncomfortable. So they're talking about Tucker and the fact that he was responsible for the murder. Because Lust is like, why should we care about him? And Envy says he was responsible for the murder. Of whom? The little girl? Or something else? So then, speaking of East City, isn't that where the Flame Colonel is staying right now? Apparently, the Fullmetal brat's there too. As furious as I am that he interfered with our work here, we can't very well let him die. He's an important sacrifice. I liked this a lot because the idea that they need to keep him alive until the correct time is a lot more interesting than they're just trying to track him down and kill him. You know, like, first of all, there's the fact that it just adds an extra layer of interest. If you know any encounter they have with him, they won't be trying to kill him. But secondly, now you have to wonder what the fuck that means. Sacrifice for what? What are they planning on doing? Don't like that. And also, I would guess any sacrifice that they are going to use him for doesn't seem like it's going to be something he would be happy to sacrifice himself toward. And why him? You know, is it because of what he did? Is it because of the knowledge that he has after having like made this weird deal? Is it because of his talent? Because he does seem to be like pretty advanced. A lot of possibilities here. So then they start talking about the other one that we were talking to. What was his name? And the scene cuts. All right, kids. I've said it once, and I hated to say it. But I'm going to say it again. Something's up with Hugh. I don't know what it is. I liked him so much. Hot dad type. Loves his family. Welcoming to the boys. Delightful. But, he is weirdly absent during the fight later and then just happens to pop up like right after. And honestly, his reasoning is sound. He's basically like, I am just a regular fucking person and y'all are a bunch of maniacs with superpowers. You damn right I stayed out of the way. However, it's not like the camera cuts to him cowering out of sight. We don't know where he was. We know where he says he was. And what's up with that? And I'll be honest, this happened the last time as well. I think that the murderer turned up with the, I'm trying to think who it was. But he like popped out of somewhere. He was like nearby quickly. And at the time I was like, that's weird. And almost went, oh my God, is he the murderer? But the murderer has a very distinctive look to him. And unless Hugh can change his like appearance, maybe he can. I don't know. Is that a possibility with alchemy? Can you change what you look like? Are there people with that? I mean, I don't know. It's suspicious. There's something ain't right. And what Les says here, with just like, oh, what's the other person? They already mentioned like the fire colonel. And the only other possibility of somebody who's like a named character are Bradley and Armstrong. And I don't see Armstrong getting involved. But he did seem to display some guilt when he was talking about the things that they did, which we will talk about during the war. Maybe he could be persuaded. I don't know. So, we go back to all of these people talking, the various, what do you call it? Because we have the State Alchemist, and like, the colonel is one of the state alchemists. But what do you call the people who aren't alchemists? Like Hawkeye isn't an alchemist, is she? What would her position be called? Is she just like a lieutenant? Or would we call them soldiers? But they're talking about this guy who has the scar on his face, the murderer. And Hughes is talking to Mustang and just explaining to him exactly how he's explaining the people that this guy has taken down already are like top of their game alchemists who specialized, this last guy, in fucking weapons making. Like that was his whole thing, and he still got taken down. So just trying to give you an idea of exactly what we're up against. The man is not a joke. Like, take it seriously. We aren't going to be able to take him down super easily. And are there any other state alchemists in the vicinity that we need to worry about? So then we go to Ed and Al, and they're sitting in the rain. This is honestly, I could not help but laugh. They're sitting in the rain, and at one point, Ed says something like, "I was hoping the rain would wash away my uncertainty, but every drop is just more depressing." And I'm like, Ed, sitting in the rain is literally like a visual metaphor for being depressed. Like, I get what you mean, but also it's unsurprising to literally anybody that you're more depressed now. Guys, is there anything more like uncomfortable in a sort of everyday sense than wet shoes? I swear to God, wet shoes, wet socks is awful. But you have the knowledge, you take the socks off and wait a bit and you can put the shoes on and be dry again. Wet shoes, though, you gotta do something to dry, like it's awful. So that was all I could think about with the two of them sitting there. It's just like, Ed, you're getting your shoes soaked. What are you doing, bud? And he's talking about what even is alchemy. Like, we are dedicating our lives to understanding it and studying it. But what is it that it even means? And it says, everything circulates. Even death is a part of that circulation. You must accept the flow. Teacher drummed that into our heads, didn't she? I thought I understood it, but I didn't understand anything. Mom proves that. Now here I am again, trying desperately to figure out a way to do the impossible. And I'm such a hopeless idiot all this time, and I haven't grown up one bit. Honestly, that's accurate. I mean, I'm glad that he's like aware of this. Really, the moment that you begin to realize, like, I don't get it, I don't understand anything, and I thought I did, that's the very beginnings of wisdom. And he is talking about how he wants to be human again. He wants to get his brother's body back. And as he's like thinking this all over sort of out loud, this dude turns up and is like, so are you Ed? And Ed looks up and the guy like draws his hand back, and Ed jumps in front of his brother the way he do, and he summons a wall to defend the two of them, and this guy just breaks through it like it's nothing. And you can see the shock, the complete shock on Ed's face as he just pounds right through that shit. Later on, when they're talking about it, Ed's theory on this is that this guy's alchemy is like destruction alchemy. That he has found a way to do a version of alchemy that stops at the destruction portion before you actually create something new which would be the full like transmutation. And that's a really interesting idea. The concept of somebody taking a type of magic that usually has like 3 stages to it and not doing all 3 stages. I could see it being simultaneously like more difficult to do or easier, depending on like how you want to write it. And I think this is a really interesting direction. I was just like, oh, okay, that actually explains a lot of what this guy's been able to do so far. So this guy is like chasing the 2 of them and breaking the steps that they're clinging to. Walls are coming down, like everything that they are attempting to do to hang on and get away, he is breaking into pieces. And thankfully, as they're like shooting off on a pillar of stone, he breaks it up and they're like on the top of a hill. So it sort of works in their favor. Like they ride it like a sled down the hill a little bit before they jump out. And I love this moment where Ed is like, I don't understand why this guy is trying to kill us. I've never avoided it in terms of like trying to make enemies. Again, I keep being a little bit surprised at Ed's like self-awareness. You know, I don't know. I keep thinking of him as like truly being a bit of a dunderhead. And he isn't really. He seems to like get it when he stops to think about it. It's just a question of if he lets himself stop to think about it. So the 2 of them are fleeing down the street. This guy is chasing them and destroying like building after building, pursuing the 2 of them. Just doesn't care. And Ed asks, why are you after us? And he says, as long as there are creators like you in the world, there must also be destroyers. And Ed is like, all right, I guess we're going to have to fight. And he slaps his hands together to make a weapon. And he comes at this dude. And they begin to fight. And this guy manages to get past them because he's really fast. And lays one hand on Al and blows the whole side of Al's armor out. And I will tell you, I was really startled, guys. I genuinely did a while I was watching. Like, I know that it's his soul attached to the armor, so it's likely fine and they can replace the armor. But I also don't know that for sure. So I genuinely had like a moment of like, oh my God, because there's no reason for me to assume that Al makes it through the whole series, you know? And I assume he will because it feels like what would Ed have to work toward if Al wasn't here? And he needs a sort of mitigating force in order for the story's balance, you know? But also, who knows? And guys, his side gets blown out. And then it goes Fullmetal Alchemist. I mean, do they need to time this like that? I hate it so much. Stop. This is an emotionally resonant moment where I'm truly having like a, oh Lord. And then they have to Fullmetal Alchemist with the still of a character. What? Not now, guys. Anyway, all right. So I don't know, man. I'm looking at the still of Scar. And he doesn't not look like Hughes to a degree. I'm still on this, like, is Hughes the fucking murderer bit. But I don't think so, but there's enough similarity in their facial structure. They both wear glasses. I mean, maybe. I gotta get off this. This is just ridiculous now. Okay. So, this is when Scar realizes that there's nothing inside the suit. I thought he already knew. This is the thing that surprised me, was that he's going after, and this answers my question from last episode, where I wondered whether or not it was just people who had like crossed a line that he was going after, or if it was State Alchemists, period, across the board. And turns out it's the second one, because he isn't even aware of what Ed did. I'm sure were he to find out, it wouldn't, like, he would just feel more justified in what he was doing. But, yeah. Kyle says it never gets better with the commercial stinger. It's funny every time. Oh, God. So, yeah, he tries to blow out, like, Ed's side and realizes it didn't do the damage he thought. And then sees pretty quickly that Ed's got the mechanical arm. And this dude, in a moment of real fucking... he can't... No. I just answered my own question. I'm thinking that this guy might be fucking Hughes in disguise, but Hughes knows about the arm. So if that were Hughes, he'd just have done this from the start. But in a moment of real fucking common sense, Homeboy's like, oh, I see. You're slapping your hands together to make a transmutation circle. Oh, I just need to take one of your arms off. He goes for the metal arm, which honestly is pretty generous. He didn't have to go for the metal arm. He could have gone for the other arm. And I wouldn't have blamed him, because that would have been the smart move, to be honest. But in any case, it's still pretty fucking, like, hardcore the way he goes for it. And it's just like, oh, well, I'll just do this. And he just breaks it up into pieces. And you see Ed flying through the air in slow motion with his eyes wide as the parts of his arm just fly around his head. And honestly, there was something really funny about this to me, of Ed just, like, truly being nonplussed. Like, I did not see that coming. Oh, God. And it's interesting that this dude knows what Ed's doing, because everyone else has been like, oh, my God, he didn't have to cast a transmutation circle. And this dude figures it out in an instant. Oh, I see what you're doing. So what's that about? Like, obviously this guy knows his shit to a degree. So then he's like towering over Ed, and I'll give you a moment to pray to a god. And Al is yelling at Ed to run away. And Ed is talking to this dude saying, I don't have a god I want to pray to. And are you after my brother Al, or just me? And this guy is like, just you, pretty much. Like, if he tries to fuck with this, then I'll do something. But if not, I don't care about him. And Ed turns around and is like, all right, I just want your word that you're not going to hurt my brother. And Al is in the background like, what are you fucking doing? And he can't get up and move. He's been blown up. And he's trying to say, you can't stop it. And then Roy fires a gun in the air and says, I don't think so, bucko. I'm taking you into custody. And this leads to a whole fucking scene later where Al is yelling at Ed. And it's honestly truly delightful. Al is just like, oh, hey, there's the stupid fucking idiot that was about to just die for no goddamn reason. And Ed is like, I was trying to save you. And he's like, you were trying to save me by fucking leaving me here alone with nobody in the street while I watch you die. Yeah, that's cool. Great sacrifice, bro. Really meaningful, helpful, really long-term thinking there. Congratulations. He is so irritated. It truly was like, it tickled me so much. And he's just like, it was like, you didn't even try. Once he took your arm, it was just like you gave up, And honestly, he's like 100% right, 1,000% right. There was just Team Al all the way on this. And I just loved how he gets to the heart of it with the way that he decides to talk about it. It's a beautiful moment. But first, we have to deal with this whole other fight. So this is when Scar starts talking about how they're profaning God, and I'm God's right hand here to deal judgment, yada, yada, yada. And this is when Roy is like, oh, is that right? And he starts walking forward. And Hawkeye is like, sir, what are you doing? And it sounds like she's going, you shouldn't be trying to take him one-on-one, in a general sense of like, it's unsafe. And it turns out like that is what she's doing, but it's much more specific. She's remembering, hey guy, it's raining today. You would really think the guy who's not useful on rainy days would be keenly aware of the fact that it's raining. Not so. No, sir. So he goes running towards this dude, ready to like throw down with him. And I love this moment. He gets this like little puff of steam. Like it's so pitiful. This guy is on him in an instant as his completely ineffective little like comes out of his fingertip. And Hawkeye slides along the ground and bashes him off of his feet so that this dude is like above him. And then she comes up with 2 guns and just goes at this dude. And he like hops backward. Honestly, like it's badass. Don't get me wrong. Like he dodges Matrix style in many ways, but the animation of him jumping backward to the alley is hilarious. It almost looks like the animation of somebody skiing, but you took the skis out of the picture. You photoshopped them and the poles right out. It's really funny to me. I just could not stop laughing. And he has this fucking idiot has no understanding of why Hawkeye did this and comes up all angry. Like, what did you do that for? And I'm like, dude, did you not see that little, like, that was like the jet in a hot tub. Like, that was not going to do anything. How do you not know already? And she's like, you know that you're useless on rainy days, dude. And he just goes, oh. And this other guy is like, oh, right, forgot. So, of course, then fucking Scar can't create your blasphemous flames. Whatever. So then here comes Armstrong. And he tries to punch this guy. But this dude is really fast. And Armstrong just winds up punching the ground. I do want to mention the awesome fucking, like, they're not even metal knuckles. Because it's like a full glove that covers... It's like fingerless gloves across the whole back of his hand. But yeah, he is like, oh, now you're about to face the strong arm alchemist. And to his credit, Scar is like, oh, I guess God's just giving me all the alchemists today so that I can just get this done real quick. Like, he should be more intimidated than he is by how many there are. And eventually he does get to a point where he's like, perhaps there are too many. But even when he gets to that point, it's very, like, detached. You know, there's no moment of, like, oh, shit, I'm in trouble now. There's no sense of urgency or fear. It's just a numbers game. He's looking around and being like, yeah, my odds aren't great here. I better go. And there was some about that, like, cracked me up. There were a lot of moments in this episode that, like, are... well done. I'm not laughing at them because they're poorly done. it's just so like carefully crafted with each character that it is funny, you know, because people are funny. So here comes Armstrong. And this turns out to be a much tougher fight than Armstrong was prepared for. He, later on, like, I think it's Roy says something to him like, hey, thanks for buying us some time. And Armstrong is like, okay, like, you're welcome, but I wasn't. I was fighting for my life. I really thought I might die. I was not buying you time. That makes it sound like I was just toying with this guy. I was about to get my ass handed to me. And I was like, word. So they start to just, again, toss fucking masonry around. And one of the people on the sidelines, I think it might be Roy, is just like, hey, how about we don't destroy the fucking city? Can we not right now? And this is when he starts talking to Scar. And they're like surprised that the killer is also an alchemist. What? Roy is like, the killer's an alchemist too? Of course he is. What? I wasn't aware that was even in doubt. How do you think he's pulling this off? Of course he is. What are you talking about? Roy, this is your job. How did you get here? I can't understand you. What did you think this guy was doing this whole time? He's breaking fucking staircases in half, man. What did you think was going on? I truly stopped at this point and was like, has anybody been paying the fucking slightest bit of attention? Like, oh my God. So annoyed. So annoyed. So this is when Ed's like, oh, transmutation process, construction, destruction, reconstruction. This guy must just stop at the deconstruction phase. And this dude is like, well, if he's an alchemist, doesn't that mean he's also straight? And I'm like, the funny thing about zealots is that they can always do whatever the fuck they want. That's always how that works, guy. So this is when Roy on the sidelines is thinking about how he's been targeting them, the alchemists that have state certification. And I really like when we go into Scar's POV here, he's thinking about how Armstrong is actually pretty fast. And he's so strong that he's almost superhuman. And I was like, isn't that what his alchemy is? And Scar says something like that combined with his alchemy. So I guess the implication here is like, you could have strong arm alchemy, but unless you're jacked as fuck, it isn't going to be that useful. Like you can always be stronger than you look, but to get to the point where you're a weapon like Armstrong is, you better be hitting that gym, I think is the implication there. So, oh my God. Yeah, Zitiegi says, yeah, combining this with him forgetting about the rain doesn't make him look great this episode. Correct. I am unimpressed. Obviously, Hawkeye should be in that position, and that's just the end of that story. But as usual, Kyle says, I mean, once you drop your brother off a cliff into a wildebeest stampede, what do you have to be afraid of? Oh, God, that was a fucking... that was a Lion King joke about Scar, for those who don't get it. Okay. I hate Kyle. All right, so Armstrong is like, I've got you cornered. And then Scar goes, but he swings a little bit too wide. And just as he is about to take this like strike that might kill, I'm assuming, Armstrong, he, like, a sixth sense sort of kicks in, and he turns just as, again, fucking Hawkeye tries shooting at him from the sidelines. Can we just have a moment of appreciation for the person who has the presence of mind to be like, hey, this dude's completely fucking distracted by our giant mutant man. Why don't we do something while he's not looking? Thank you, Hawkeye. Is Hawkeye going to be the Nami of this show where I'm just going to be like, why is she not in charge? Because honestly, this is a theme for me in so many things I cover, is that there's some dude who's allegedly in charge, and then there's the person who's actually in charge. And we all know it's always a woman. It's just so annoying. So anyway, Roy, I hate you and you're fired. And and with Hawkeye, it's fired, rehired, raise. So she only grazes him, unfortunately, on his temple. And this is the moment where he's like, yo, okay, maybe there are too many of them. And his glasses fall off. And Armstrong says, red eyes, brown skin. And off to the other side, Roy says, of course, he's an Ishvalan. Ishvalan? I can't remember how he said it. And Roy says, just give up, Scar. You're not getting away. And Scar is like, I beg to differ, and destroys the actual street and falls through the hole into the sewers and takes off. And I think it's Roy who says something like, hey guys, don't go down there. And one of the guys is like, you think? I really enjoyed that a lot. This little moment of everyone standing around the hole just going, welp. So this is when fucking Hughes pops up and just says, is it over now? And I'm just like, Hughes, did you just come out of the sewer? But he didn't. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, he says that he's not going to be out here with the pseudo-humans. And I was like, that's harsh, but all right, I guess. And then we have the moment with Al yelling at Ed. I love that Al pretends that he's like dead for a second. He just really milks this moment. And if like, I just thought it was great. He lets Ed get really close and then fucking decks him. And the animation has Ed spinning in place like a pinwheel. And then he punches him again. Why do you keep punching me like that? Making the decision to die is something only an idiot does. And I'll say it all I want to. Survival is the only way, Ed. Live on. Learn more about alchemy. You could find a way to get our bodies back and help people like Nina. You can't do that by dying. I won't allow you to abandon the possibility of hope and choose a meaningless death. And now my arms come off because my brother's a big fat idiot. And then fucking Ed coming in with the jokes going, we really are falling apart, aren't we? He says, we look like we belong in a junkyard. And I was like, that's actually very, very true and accurate to this moment. So this is when we find out what happened with the Ishvalan, that they are so embittered towards the State Alchemists. They were a race of people who lived to the east of us, believed that their god Ishvala was the one absolute creator. Even after they were annexed into the country, there were still conflicts between us and them. the real thing that I have a question about is the annexed into the country. Do you mean conquered? Is that the word you're looking for? Are you trying to say they were colonized? Are you just dancing around the fact that they were, like, taken? Is that what's going on? Because that felt suspect. I'm just saying. Okay, so then 13 years ago, a military officer accidentally shot and killed an Ishvalan child, and that led to a full-blown civil war. And we see them like guns versus knives, essentially. The rebellion spread to the whole eastern sector. After 7 years of this, an order came down from the military high command. And we see Mr. Fuhrer Bradley to exterminate Ishval. Many state alchemists were brought into act as human weapons. And we see fucking our friends up in here. We've got Mustang. We've got Electro Mustache Man. There's a weird-looking round-headed man. And we see a couple of them, like, seeming to genuinely enjoy the destruction. There's the guy who pops up with real long black hair who just, like, there's fire behind him, and it's unclear to me exactly what it is that he's doing. But he seems to be happy to be completely, like, destroying these people. It's pretty rough. There's somebody who snaps a finger and it looks like an entire town explodes. And then you just see all of these, like, twisted bodies in the street. Needless to say, the State Alchemists produced striking results, which is quite a choice of word there. Okay, so this dude is coming after y'all because you are genociders. I'm not mad at him. I think that's fine. I'm just saying. God, luck to you. These people do not need to be out here taking orders if this is how they're going to be. I'm not mad at it. I mean, just truly, what person gets told, hey, go destroy this entire country? And they're like, all right. Like, no, what kind of person you are? What, and at this point, Ed says, because somebody says, like, if you look at it from a certain perspective, his taking revenge is justified. And I'm like, from a certain perspective? I mean, like, no, from pretty much any perspective. And Ed says there's no justification for taking revenge on people who had nothing to do with it. And I'm like, okay, look, the thing is, everybody that he has attacked so far, other than you, Ed, did have something to do with it. It seems like I said, we see this, like, flashback footage, and there are people that are dead now in that flashback. I mean, maybe you weren't involved, Ed, but you signed on with an organization that carried this out. And it doesn't seem like you're having the correct qualms about that. This is what kind of bothered me about this moment, is that Ed keeps on railing about this dude and doesn't stop and think to himself, wow, y'all did that? That is who I'm joined up with? I expected there to be a little bit of, like, reconsidering. Maybe I was wrong to accept this offer. No. He's just dressing up his lust for vengeance in the mantle of his god and calling himself an agent of justice, which is a real interesting choice of words, considering that we've been seeing, like, the fucking personification of lust walking around. Maybe she is feeding into this. Like, maybe that's exactly lust is something that I always think of as being sexual, but it doesn't have to be. So, yeah, maybe there's something else happening here. And at this point, Mustang is like, we can't let ourselves be killed for his cause. Next time there will be no talk. Got it? And Hughes asks Ed what him and Al's plan is going to be. And Ed is basically like, well, first thing is first, we've got to go and see our mechanic and get our arm put back on. Our arms. And he says it in such a way as he says, like, there's no choice. Like, he doesn't want to see this girl again. And I'm curious what the deal is, because, like, obviously in the flashbacks that we have seen, they didn't get along super well. And I really, like, held that against Ed, because this girl is providing you with the means to continue walking around and functioning and using alchemy, which really, it feels like you should be worshiping her. You should be on your knees, literally supplicating to her. And you're out here throwing her attitude. Doesn't work. I don't see it. So what is his problem? Is it just the fact that she can hold that over him? Is it just him being, like, fucking pissy? But anyway, so that is the end of the episode. We just see, their friend. I can't remember her name. I know we've been told her name. It was like Windry. So Windry. And she's got her little goggles on and she's sitting at her desk working on something. And then the episode ended. These episodes are so short, and I can't believe I can always talk about them for an hour. Winry. Oh, I was so close. Thank you, guys. And I swear, when she pops up, I got so excited thinking we were going to, like, have the beginnings of them restoring their armor in this episode. And then it, like, ended and the credits started and I was like, God damn it. The opening credits, I skip them now. I watched them, like, the very first episode, but ever since I've been skipping them because I didn't absorb any of the apparent spoilers the first time, but I know I would if I saw it again. And the, like, opening credits are like 2 minutes long. They're really long. So anyway, yeah, that is the end of that episode. And I'm in what, 5? How many episodes are there per season? How many seasons are there? I know there's, 64 episodes, because I think that's what Max scheduled. But, yeah, I am curious about exactly how these are broken up. Anyway, all right, I better wrap this up. Thank you guys again for coming and hanging out with me in the chat. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Max, again, for commissioning this. And I will be seeing you all again soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.